Greetings and welcome, everyone. It's AYCG Gamecast episode 480. I'm one of your hosts, Jim Gass, joined by Mike Sneedy.
What's up?
Corey Feinsod.
Loa.
And Tony Korkanakis.
Woo!
Welcome, guys. Welcome, listeners and viewers, to 480. Wow. We're getting up there. Getting close to 500. I've almost done this 500 times. This is our of the decade. This is our 5 through 1 or 1 through 5, however you want to say it. Top best games of the decade. I almost said movies. We just finished our movies one. So if you haven't heard the movies, we did just finish that one. It's a two-parter, just like this one. We recommend listening to all of that.
We did afterwards 10 through 6 last week.
Yeah, afterwards we're going to recap our top 10 through 1 for the games. Until then, though, we're going to get started here. Got a lot to cover, and
let's do it.
Got a lot of content coming, so we'll definitely get into that. But again, spoilers possible in this, just for those wondering. We're going to be talking about the games. We might mention spoilers. We did in the movies. So here we go. I think I kept the same order, right? Did we do the same order? Yes, we did. I've been writing these down, so I kept the order, so I know exactly. I'm keeping this organized this time. Okay. Again, this list for me, we just mentioned before we started this podcast, was 10 through 6, was where that was falling for me in the games, was the most interesting part. My top 5 were like, I had that out like immediately, and I'm like, I stared at it, I'm like, I am very happy with this order. Like, I just knew it. Like, I'm just like, I don't really, I'm very happy. The only thing I could maybe switch is these two, possibly. The next two we're talking about here. But my number 5 movie of the decade, game of the decade, sorry, I realized I said it, is Zelda Breath of the Wild. It was an amazing, shocking way they did Zelda as a game that's always been a dungeon crawler. I don't want to call it dungeon crawler, but dungeon oriented with puzzles. To have a game that's open world suddenly, and literally, if you see it, you can go there. As a promise was done before, and it's never been really like followed through with. Like, you literally can go to places that you can see. I remember when I first got out of that first area in this game, just dropping down, gliding down into the unknown, and getting I was so afraid out there with 3 hearts, and like so much damage can be done, and you're just like, what do I do? Where do I go? And I decided to start climbing the mountain. I just remember this first part because I started climbing this mountain where I was supposed to go through the valley, and I'm like, I see goblins there. I don't want to fight goblins, so I'm going to climb around them. So I climbed this mountain, and I creatively got up there with my stamina dropping fast because I was very early in the game. And I got to this grass area up in the top of this mountain, random like valley, and there was this giant ogre, like one-eyed beast that was there, and I'm just like, holy crap, what is that? And it killed me in one hit. And it's just like, oh god, that was my memories. That's like the thing that stood out in my memory of this game. My only issues with this game were that it didn't have enough dungeons. I really would love to see the sequel when they come out with it, more dungeons in it, because I did like what they did with the dungeons. There were some very difficult puzzles in that, and I just felt like I wanted more of the core style Zelda game. I mean, I'm not a huge open world guy, but I did like this blend. And according to my Xbox 10-decade thing, I'm a pretty open world guy. I don't know. I just really love this game, and I can't wait for the sequel that they're making for this game. And it did so many things. Like, the only thing, the weapon damage. I didn't like that at all. That I didn't like at all. Stand by that statement. It's not for me. I prefer to have my Master Sword and slice through things when I finally get that thing. So I do.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair.
So, love this game 100%. Like, this fantastic, huge world. People are still playing it today. The attach rate was ridiculous with this game. It was overselling
more than one. Yeah.
It was overselling the console. It deserves to be of the decade list. Absolutely. I'm sure Tony's going to talk about it later on.
Nah, I don't know.
Yeah, no, there's no question. Like, listen, when I was writing this down, I'm like, I'm probably not ranking this high enough, and like, I know where Tony will love this thing like a lot higher. But my other games, I just played more time in.
It's subjective.
It's arguable next one, but
okay.
All right, number 4 for Mike. Go ahead, Mike.
5.
Oh, 5. 5. Sorry. Jesus, I'm off.
Get ahead of yourself.
You're flustered. That's all.
I'm off. Yep.
My number 5 is
Breath away from the wild.
Yes.
So go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Metal Gear Solid 5.
Oh,
Phantom Pain.
interesting. Did not
Nice.
expect that.
Yeah, I didn't see that one.
Speaking of
No?
open world.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. This is unfortunate for me that this was my entry to the Metal Gear franchise, but
It was.
this was great. Honestly, I remember
it was.
before we got to like the
Yep.
last section of this game, we were all going crazy about it.
It
Like
was a great game.
it was a great game.
Yes.
Obviously, it's an open world, limited open world, but it had all the different ways you could go about completing these missions. And then you had the mother base, and I'm always a sucker for like an evolving, expanding, home base. Like that's what I liked about the old X-Men Legends games and too that we don't have in the new one. I love just having a home base you can relax in that,
Right.
but you build on it.
Just pause real quick. I think we can get you into Suikoden. Go on.
Anyway, so and then the actual gameplay, open world in the best way, where there's so many different ways that you can go about completing your objectives, and it's tracked in a way where you're rewarded, like by messages, by bonus points or whatever, if you do things a certain way or a different way. And like it's just optional objectives sometimes. It takes like almost that principle of like GoldenEye and takes it to the next level from way back then. And the story made sense for a while, and while it did, I really liked it. I didn't like the opening trudge through the game, through that opening cinematic crawling on the floor thing, but it was just had the gameplay, it had this sort of sense of progression, even personally, it had everything you needed, and then the story went off the rails, and it didn't really finish itself.
That's ultimately why it didn't make my list. I mean, that's honestly, I did consider it. It's on my list of like 20 games, but it didn't make my top 10.
The game was really long by the time it went off the rails. So
it went
I got my value out of it for sure.
Yeah,
it did, but it was so
there's
far
a
off the
complete
rails.
great game there. It it didn't end right, and then in retrospect, you can go back and nitpick how boring it is to play through that first section of the game again if you ever go back to that. So, so that's why it's 5. Like, but
I get you.
This game could have been among the top games.
Oh, it would have been on my
if
list.
it delivered on its promise that it made by the middle of it and finished out the right way in a somewhat cohesive storyline. It would have been.
This was a game that was hurt by the Kojima fall.
Absolutely. Like
for sure.
If this game had been fully realized in Kojima's vision, I have no doubt this would be a top 5 game. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Like if not higher, top 3.
It would have been in top 3. It probably would have been top 3. Yeah.
But this makes it up this high for me because it was
it's so impressive.
Out of nowhere for me. Out of nowhere, really. Mm-hmm. And I am a little disappointed that this was my entry point to the series.
What made you decide to get? I forget because I know like
honestly, like again, we argue about. We argue about this sometimes. It was the reviews. It was
the review.
We were also
well across the board, and then I always wanted. Yeah, we were all playing it, and I always wanted to get it. I just never had like PlayStation 1.
I've always really loved Metal Gear, and this game was fantastic. And we podcasts about this game.
Oh, I mean, we were going crazy about it, and then we got to the part where we had recycled levels, and didn't know what was happening with certain characters that went crazy and left, and we're just like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I still remember trying to go rock to rock to get to the what's her name, the sniper that was Quiet. That whole sequence I remember vividly, like because I got killed a billion times during that sequence. Yeah. But yeah, so. Yeah, it was great.
And they take her away from you near the end of that game, too.
Yeah, they do. All right, Tony, you're number 5.
My number 5 is Fire Emblem Awakening. I didn't think about this because it's, I didn't want to do multiple series from the same, games from the same series. And it was between this and Three Houses. But the way I look at it was Awakening was the perfect culmination of the old style. Yeah, it's the perfect combination of the old school style of Fire Emblem, where it's just missions and some reprieve and like a base, just like we were talking about. But the story was fantastic. The characters were also like I loved all those characters to the point where like by the end, like, you have so many powerful characters and you can only take on so many. You're just like, well, I want to take all my children to the battlefield to kill people, and you gotta be extremely selective, at that point in time. But I mean, all the characters
I had my A squad and then the A plus squad.
Right,
so it's like,
exactly.
That's who I had to take. It was just like, oh, sorry guys.
Yeah, but I mean, the story was phenomenal. Kind of like how I was talking about Avengers and last time. This, a game was originally designed as like, hey guys, like, Fire Emblem sales have been declining. It's just kind of not worth our investment anymore. So we're gonna do one last one. This is it. Put everything you've ever wanted to do into this last game. And the developers and intelligences were like, all right, we're gonna go buck wild. And it's like this weird thing where it's like the descendants of the character from the first game, where it's just like, oh yeah, we could trace our bloodline back to like Martha Hero King and stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay, that's pretty cool. And then there's that twist with the mysterious stranger, the masked stranger trope and stuff like that. But then they twist that into like, oh, like we got even like future time travel bullshit. And it's like, in my Fire Emblem game, okay, I'm all for this now. Like, this is a thing I didn't know I wanted. And then Jim, like you talked about last week, with like the romance options, because now it's just like, not for the cutscenes, it's like strategic. Like, all right, your child with this person would be so overpowered. I need to hook you guys up. I need to play matchmaker. You guys
got to get together. Yeah. I would check their summon. And you'd be like, can they match? Yep. Yeah. Okay. Here we go.
It's like, it's just because it was just in a disgusting way. Because if you were to do this in real life, it'd be like kind of creepy. But it's like, yes, I do want my Pegasus Rider to hook up with my Dark Mage, so that I can get a Pegasus Rider with Gale Force that can just, whenever they kill somebody, they get to go again. It's like ridiculous. It's like, why are you hooking me up again? It's like, don't ask questions. I'm just doing it and stuff like that. But yeah, Fire Emblem just was a fantastic overall package, delivered on pretty much all fronts. And Three Houses, I mean, it's just up there, but I think we could still see an evolution of that formula. So I think the new decade, the next
I would like to see something from, like, I would like to see that whole Descendants thing from Awakens mesh into another Fire Emblem game. Like, like I said, love that aspect of it. So you give me that with Three Houses, and I'm in there for like the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, Corey, what's your number 5?
My number 5 is God of War, the new one.
That was my 6.
That was. I mean, that obviously, I think God of War series had a stigma. It's like, if you like that style of gameplay, then the action crazy big cinematic stuff. This kind of toned it down a little bit, but it still delivered on the cinematic aspect for me and had a lot of crazy big moments. But the combat, I really enjoyed that combat. I thought that there was a lot there to explore, and the upgrades and different things that you could kind of gear towards a certain way or a certain style of gameplay. Now, obviously, once you get certain weapons, it opens up even more.
That's what when I got the what was it, the traditional weapons, the flash. That's when I was like, this game is actually really awesome. The combat.
Yeah, and I really liked that, figuring all that out and kind of solving that puzzle, as well as they had a good enough story there. I thought that the theme was a lot better implemented here. Not necessarily better implemented, but I liked the Norse mythology a little more than the Greek mythology, I think, in this setting at least. And the kid, I think
that's also a product of the times, where like Norse, with like Thor being big right now and stuff. I just think that was a good area to explore. So yeah,
and just like I said, the kid was good. The companion actually was effective, and he made combat unique as well, because you could use him in different ways. So.
Use him to stun or distract. So
yeah, and it's a very pretty game too.
Yeah, it was very nice. Yeah. All right, number 4. Number 4 for me. Number 4. That's my old list. Oh, jeez, where am I at? Okay, number 4. Number 4 for me was Borderlands 2, which I won't talk too long about, because I feel like we'll be talking about this a little bit later. But it was my game of the year. Back when I was playing it like crazy with Corey, I spent hours upon hours collecting loot in this game. That's ultimately why it beat out Breath of the Wild, because I played it like way more. I guess it's the draw of the more loot kind of thing into it that just kind of makes it better. Plus the villain. I mean, Ganon's fantastic, but I felt like that fight in Breath of the Wild wasn't the best fight in the game.
I've also seen it before.
Yeah, and so like Handsome Jack though.
No, Handsome Jack is
That
an
fucking
amazing.
man. He's the.
Yeah.
I mean, he's.
Him and Gladys are like top tier, villains.
I mean, the double rainbow line to this day, I still could hear. I could listen to that constantly. Double, what does it mean? It's just like I could listen to that constantly from him, and the delivery of all of his. The guy, that voice. I don't know who the voice actor was.
They nailed the voice.
So for me, number 4 for me, it was awesome. Huge game, lots of content. Even the bonus content, I played all the DLC with that. Not the latest, but most of the DLC content. Let me rephrase that then. Not the tie-in, but loved it. So, cool. And I'm not going to talk more about it because we'll be cycling back to this. There's no question in my mind later. Not to give up anybody else's list, but we all know we're coming back to this. Mike.
All right. My number 4 is personally controversial. I went back and forth on this game many times, and I still believe it's overrated. But I'll put it at 4.
And overrated is 4 top of the decade.
Overrated top 4.
Did you give yourself you're overrating it yourself? Is what you're saying?
No, I'm not overrated. Trust me.
Everybody else is overrated.
They are. Witcher 3. It's Witcher 3. It's going to be number 1 on everyone else's list if you look around. It's probably has. It could be up there for the most number 1s for these lists if you want to look around.
I didn't look it up, but I gotta look this up now. Go on.
I looked it up, and it's
there
hard when you have some other games. I mean, that were mentioned just recently.
Yeah. Go on, Mike.
But so The Witcher 3, it took me 3 times to actually get into this game.
Why? I just can't. Why torture yourself that much to play this game?
Because once I did, it's my 4th favorite of the decade.
It's like, okay, this book is fantastic, but you got to get through 300 pages before it actually becomes good. I mean, just why?
Because I knew that. First of all, there was big gaps.
But again, but this country.
There's some. I think everybody has that though. Like the first time they try something, like it didn't really mesh with them at the time, and then they go back to it, and then it really fits. I mean, that happens a lot.
But you could say like it's not how it starts, how it finishes. But
not even that. I'm just saying like you may not be in that moment ready for whatever it is, and then later on you go back to it. And
right
wow.
You might be right for that moment.
Part of it for me was I actually lowered the difficulty, and I know that the purists say the opposite about this, but you die too much when you don't really know. The combat is okay, it's not great, and the traversal I think is pretty bad. Yeah, but
I didn't think any aspect of the actual gameplay was that great.
But once I went focused on like the magic stuff, and that makes the combat way more interesting and fun and effective, I think. Although, so there's other things you can cheese in other branches too, like other like pure sword stuff. But once you get past just dying all the time and not being able to do anything, and the fact that the first area is just boring, this is the best questing I think in a game. Period.
Mm-hmm.
Like side quest stuff, or just being like
just questing. Yeah.
Okay.
And quantity again and quality, I don't think are mutually exclusive. There's so much content in this game, like it never feels dead. To this day, where in a second playthrough, I'm still like, there's still like new things like the main character can say, new things I can find. There's just so much in it that it creates the most like alive world. I mean, and some of it is kind of like repetitive and barren too, but you just have so much you can do. There's all the contracts, which are optional missions. They all have a story with them, which are contracts. There's lots of things that kind of matter later on in the main story and side quests as well. The characters are interesting. There's this great implied history that it's not implied actually because I just missed the previous 2 games. But even in the first game, there's an implied history with these characters as well. I'm sure. And it got me into this fantasy world, which I'm not into too often. It's sort of an alternative one where you have this very Polish-centered, like folklore style. It's kind of unique when you look at it. It doesn't quite line up with the typical Tolkien like setting, so it's just different enough to distinguish itself, I think. And yeah, it's just, and you can get into the loot aspect too. You want to upgrade your armor, you have to go to certain people, and then there's the whole Gwent thing, which I resisted playing for the longest time, and then I got into it because in game in the game, you can actually, go specific places and beat certain people to get certain cards. And it's like, that makes it more rewarding. Like, you're rewarded for your patience in this game. And I was in the long term, and now I would consider myself a Witcher fan, even though I hated it at
think
first.
it's overrated.
I do think it's overrated because the actual gameplay is not.
No, I mean, it's your number 4 though, Mike, and I wouldn't necessarily say that it's overrated. Then, like, I would just say, it's people highly regard this game highly because of things that I don't agree with per se, but.
But you also regard it highly. I mean, out of all the games you played, out of all the games you played in 2010 to 2019, you put it at number 4.
Yeah, that's played this game.
I understand it's not number 1.
Most played games.
That's high marks. I mean, that's high marks, Mike.
Yeah, that's high, but it's like game of the century for a lot of people.
Oh, wow.
I don't know. I think
it's valid.
Yeah. Oh.
All right.
Skyrim probably beats it for a lot of people.
Yeah, Skyrim's
fantasy.
Yeah. You could say Skyrim's overrated for a lot of people. That's fine.
Skyrim is definitely overrated. It's not on my list.
Yeah, didn't make mine.
None of our lists.
Spoilers, not on any of our lists. I'm pretty certain. Tony, you're number 4.
My number 4 was Xenoblade Chronicles 1 on the Wii.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I could probably insert 2 in this slot depending on the day and stuff like that, because the games are just so close in quality and depth. But
the ending's really tied together.
Yeah. What I have to say about this one is just, first of all, this was a game that it came out on the Wii, and it was during that, I would say, Nintendo hubris era, where they're like, we're making so much money off of Wii Sports and Wii Fit and all that Wii Play stuff that the games that our other developers have made, the core demographic, you know what, some of these are just too Japanese, and we're not going to take a risk, and we're not going to release it. This game came out in 2010 in Japan, and it took 2 years of campaigning by fans, respectfully clamoring for this under the banner of Operation Rainfall, that said these games are amazing and they deserve to be released outside of Japan. And then 2 years later, we finally got our shot. And I remember it was a GameStop exclusive. You had to pre-order it and stuff like that. It had a low print run initially. And I got it, and I was like, all right, let me see what the hubbub of that. And, I'm a huge JRPG fan, but I felt like that generation, the PS3, Xbox 360, Wii generation, was just terrible for Japanese RPGs. I mean, Square Enix shit the bed with Final Fantasy. I mean, we got 3 Final Fantasy 13 games. We didn't get a single Dragon Quest game. Persona was completely absent until after Vita. Right, exactly, and that was
it was the same game you played on.
Right, it was the same game. So in that generation where just JRPGs were just in the shitter, this game came out by a company, Monolith Soft, that was like such an underdog in that genre, and they just came out and were like, boom, open world. These graphics are insane for the Wii. Like, if you looked at it, like, all the assets are built with a high resolution in mind. It's just the Wii could only display it. If you run it in like the Dolphin emulator, it's so crisp and so amazing. The depth of view, the draw distance stuff is amazing. But the story is fantastic. It starts out really typical Japanese shonen, where it's like, oh, boy meets girl, and then stuff happens, and you want being like a hero, figure and stuff like that. But about halfway in the game, it just like takes that and just turns it upside in its head, and you're like, oh shit! And it gets kind of like in that, what I was saying on the last podcast with Inception, it just takes these things and just puts on original layers. And it's just a fantastic game. The combat is great. The music is fantastic. I mean, I can listen to that soundtrack all day. And I'm just so happy that not only do we get it, but they're remastering it. Like, Nintendo's actually funding a remaking that game.
Happening.
Right. It's not just like HD port, like quick and dirty. It's like remastering this game, and I'm just so excited for this year because a lot more people are going to get to play it. So
yeah, that's awesome. All right, Corey, you're number 4.
My number 4 is Destiny.
Nice.
Destiny.
Ooh, I'm surprised that's not higher.
Yeah, there's other games, but Destiny is probably the second most played game ever for me.
Yeah,
obviously. Yeah. This game is more of a hobby than like a game, So, and like I connected with people more so with this game than like any other game probably because of the online component and the fact that it is essentially an MMO without being the MMO that World of Warcraft is. And yeah, it's got loot, and obviously I love that shooting, grinding. And there's some pretty interesting story stuff to it as well. Like there's a lot of great lore in Destiny, and
the Taken King was like a big. That's when it took off.
I mean, the Taken King was just that changed the game for Destiny.
It made story. It made story because before that I was like, I don't fucking know what's going on in this game.
Yeah, and like raiding wasn't really a thing on console. Yeah. Like this like brought raids to console, and like pretty tough. Like if people didn't know how to do them, I wasn't figuring it out anytime soon. There were some pretty crazy puzzles and things that needed to get figured out, and just watching those like world's first runs were really cool too, just to see how long it took people to actually finish them.
Yeah, I mean, just because you're talking about it, I remember there was a thread on Reset Era last week that said like the newest puzzle like wasn't solved for over 24 hours. That was like a big deal because it's like nobody's solved it. I was like, it's really cool because like it reminds me of my WoW days where it's like the Jim, you remember like world firsts on the bosses and all that stuff.
The
like
bosses,
it was like
there were guilds racing to finish down those bosses when they first came out. Yeah,
like recently Bungie's been a lot more into the raid competition, so to speak, as well, and like they actually give belts to the first.
Cool. That's really
belts.
Cool. Yeah.
And special emblems if you beat it like in the first 24 hours. And there's like a YouTube streamer that's pretty popular who beat it with 2 minutes after 24 hours. He missed it by 2 minutes.
Oh no!
Oh man!
So it was like so everybody like called him like 2 minutes late or something like that. But
of course, got to be toxic.
Yeah, exactly. But so Destiny, obviously they continue to pour content into this game and work on it, and I think Bungie's split from Activision is only going to help.
I agree on this statement. Yeah,
just everything they've been doing to try to there was a little bit of misstep with Destiny 2 for sure. They can't deny that.
Give them credit. We probably wouldn't have had Destiny without Activision, but I think the split will make it better, which is crazy to say.
I mean, somebody would have stepped in if it wasn't Activision.
Yeah,
it was just too hot of a developer. But I mean, Activision was there initially. So, but yeah, just there's so much there, and they continue to support it to this day. They're still giving out content, and they're making it free to play, try to make it as easy as possible to get into, which is great. But yeah, one of my favorite games of the decade, obviously, and number 4 overall.
Yeah. Number 3 for me is a game that I've actually, one of the few games that I have played multiple times to finish is The Last of Us. That game for me, love playing it. I have played it on every difficulty, I think, at some point. Played it on the hardest difficulty in the last playthrough on the remaster for PS4. I love that world to a point. Like, I'm not very excited for Last of Us 2, which is crazy to say, considering this is number 3 on my list of decade games.
It's that Inception idea that we talked about last.
Yeah.
It's like...
It's the shot
ended
factor.
Perfectly.
The ending of this game was so good with Joel and Ellie. It was just such an open-ended, like... what's he gonna? You didn't tell her. You should have told her. That kind of thing. It's just like, and then like, I agreed with the character as it was going down. I'm like, I agree. Like the way, because you played Joel throughout this whole game. You're like, this is exactly how I would behave. You're like, no, you're not taking her brain. And it's just like, I just feel like that's when I found that news out, that was my reaction, like as I'm watching the cutscene, and that was the reaction of the character. And I'm like. You're in sync, and so it just resonated with me like so well that it was such a great game. And then visually, again, graphically, it's a PS3 game that almost killed my PlayStation, but it probably did kill my PlayStation. I mean, it would take me. The load screens were so bad in this game for me. It was so bad. My PlayStation was screaming to like fan wise to load this. Yeah. The PS4 was loud with this one because I played this in the original PS4 before I got my Pro unit, and it was pretty loud on that one. But like, I just love the post-apocalyptic world that was focused on zombies, but did it so much better than The Walking Dead in terms of like humanity's survival and like the infected aspect of things. And I don't know, I just felt like it was a better. I thought it was like it took the concept of like what The Walking Dead was and just made it better. And I like that aspect of it. Not to make fun of The Walking Dead, as it was number 10 on my list for a game. but I feel like the story, I don't know, I just liked it much better. I like the characters better. I just like everything, every aspect. Ellie, like playing as Ellie, like the first time in this game was crazy. When you're hunting in the woods and such, and then
Ethan.
yeah, and then that whole thing. I mean, it was just, I don't know. I just love this game. It was great. The only thing I didn't like, I remember, and I can talk about it now, is I hope they fix this in the sequel, is the constant, okay, this part is the zombies, and this part is the humans, and this part is you go
very formulaic. Like that was my biggest criticism. This is how it went. Like exploration sequence where it's just like figuring out how to get to the next area, including like the damn raft, where the point where Ellie even makes a joke about it, like, oh look, this thing again. I'm like, that's how I feel, Ellie. Thank you for saying it. And it's like zombie sequence,
the water,
and then
human
sequence,
and I'm just like I get it was a new game, but like you're saying, Jim, like I would love to see them interact and
I think it was the first one with like the distracting mechanism, like with the throwing bottles, wasn't it? Like
the first? No, I mean that's been in things before.
That's Metal Gear's done that.
Yeah.
Well, I meant like, was it like the reaction of it though? I thought like taking a bottle and chucking it, breaking it against something, and then like, I don't know. I know that you can do that.
It's pretty much in any stealth game.
You're right. It's in Metal Gear. Yeah. All right. So that was my number 3 game. Mike, your number 3.
My number 3 is if we're doing, I guess, one per franchise, although I might like try to combine them here. Injustice/Injustice 2.
That's fun.
Because with the first one, it had a better story, and it really introduced a lot of mechanics that actually got me into a fighting game series for the first time. Obviously, like I'm a big fan of like Justice League stuff, like, and we got pretty much all those voice actors back in this, which was great. And we had a dark storyline, an alternate sort of future where Superman goes crazy and becomes a dictator, which obviously, and this spawned a comic series that I think is still going.
I read the first few of them, like first like 30 issues I read of that.
Yeah. So the story is top notch. It's got like the best single player, fighting game content, I think. And you have this sort of interesting new take where you have lots of interactable objects. There's stage transitions, and then there's the sort of meter wager thing which is, again, I'm not going to try to explain it, but it's just a different way to use like meter in a fighting game, and it's like a secondary use of it too. So it was very interesting to me, and once you get into it, it's sort of like, all right, this is great, this is its own thing, but you can master it, and it's really the only fighting series where I was able to get online and win like about 50% of the time just by learning it that much. So then the second game comes, and then it adds this other layer of gear for these iconic characters that you can mix and match, and you can get colors, and it made like their versions of loot boxes fun somehow, and it was just crazy because you kept playing, you kept trying to get more pieces, match stuff up, and then you would have boosts too with this gear that would only happen in the single player stuff, which was a lot of the stuff. So you can load up on kryptonite gear if you have a boss fight against the Kryptonian, or you can load up on different stats just based on the
very RPG-esque.
Yeah, so you had all this replayability in a fighting game that was all mostly single player based, but you could still play it multiplayer and not be bothered with that stuff. So no one really kept the gear effect on when you went online, because that's stupid. But graphically, these games looked great too, both of them for their time. And then the DLC, you have the Ninja Turtles with the Batman characters, and that's gonna get number 3 for me by itself, just that combination. No, so I put a lot of time into this, more than I ever thought I would put into fighting games for both of them, and it's just it changed my thoughts on the whole genre pretty much. So
awesome,
big deal for me.
All right, Tony, you're number 3.
Well, speaking of fighting games, mine's gonna have to be Smash Bros. Ultimate, just because it's been a little over a year now. But this to me now is finally like the definitive Smash experience, where I feel like it's finally given me enough incentive, because at the core gameplay, I think Melee is still the most polished and still feels like the most natural to me. But I know it's a little too fast for most people, where like it just they don't know what they're doing, and the reaction time requirement is just high. I don't even know if I could play competitively these days at my old age. But Ultimate now just gives you like no reason to go back to the older ones unless it's just you want that melee experience, because they brought all the characters back. We're at what, 74, 75 at this point.
It's crazy.
100 stages, over 1,000 soundtracks, and to me the series has just outgrown itself to the point where like it's not just a celebration of like Nintendo anymore. It's a celebration of like video games in itself, because back when Wii U 3DS came out, it was like, oh look, Cloud's a guest character and Bayonetta's a guest character, and it's like, that's crazy, and before then it was like Solid Snake and Sonic the Hedgehog, and you're just like, all right, like we'll just keep going here. And it's just like, okay, now we got like Ryu, we have Ken, we have Joker from Persona, we have Banjo-Kazooie, the fucking Microsoft. Sakurai's on his reveal, and he's like, hey, this game used to be a Nintendo franchise, but now you can play it on Xbox One. He literally said those words on his stream that said, you could play it available now on Xbox One. Like, it's just insane to me that an official representative of one first-party company is telling you, like, hey, go play it on this other video game console. But not even just, like, the big stuff, like the recognition of, like, indie characters where, you have an Undertale reference, guest me character. Shovel Knight is an assist trophy. And then on this latest one, where we'll talk about it, I'm sure, next week on the news, Cuphead is a me costume now. Right. It comes with the soundtrack. It celebrates from the very small developers, and Cuphead was what, like a 3-man team or something like that, all the way up to the big boys. And it's just one of those things where it truly feels like this is a celebration of gaming in all its forms, because it really goes from Pac-Man all the way up to Pokemon and Fire Emblem and Splatoon. Is probably the last big first party game from Nintendo, where it's just it covers all those bases. And it's to the point where like now you have these companies that are just like, hey, if you want this character smash, just like let us, like we'll give you whatever you want, like whatever you need, bro, we got you. Like even Sakurai joked around when they got Terry Bogard from SNK, and they're like, we submitted about 50 tracks because we figured in the past they'll like select 10 to let us use, and they're like, yeah, go ahead, use them all. And it's just like, what the hell? Like, it's just absurd. But and then aside from that, like the competitive aspect is just so fascinating to watch. It's just seeing professionals play this game is just it's almost like it sounds corny, but like it's almost like a dance where you just have these characters, and at certain points where like the top tier characters are fighting, and just like you're just gonna see this amazing like little dance of just like footsies, hops, cancels, all that stuff, and it just chef's kiss. Just like watching those finals every year at EPO. Cool.
All right, Corey, you're number 3.
My number 3 is also The Last of Us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I'm surprised. Okay, all right.
Yeah. So number 3, Last of Us. The Last of Us, like you mentioned, Jim, earlier, obviously had some great characters, really interesting take on the zombie without being zombies thing. And that opening sequence just like floors you, like, oh my God, what the, like, this is happening. Like you're in the moment as things go to shit, and then your character like suffers this huge loss, which basically puts him on this path of self-destruction essentially, and makes him the character who he is, which then contributes to the relationship he has with Ellie. And he's an asshole. He's like, that's who like you need to be in this world. Like, you cannot be a good person and survive in this world. And that's what every character in this game is, an asshole. Yeah. Because you're not gonna be around for very long if you're not. And so you then find this girl who's not necessarily innocent, but again, she's pretty much an asshole too. But
in the grand scheme of things, she's
right. But yeah, she's this innocent child, and then you have that that opening sequence reflects down, and then you're like, oh shit, now you gotta take care of this, and you feel it as the player, like you want to kind of help this person, help this kid, and be that father figure for her. And then the gameplay, I think, did a good job. Like, we talk about how the stealth aspects and things like that. I think it's one of the better versions of it, where when you play it on the toughest difficulty, they make things much harder. You don't get as many materials, resources.
Supplies,
you don't get to use your Echo Vision shit,
Yep.
whatever that I don't even know what it is because I never really used it anyway. But you don't get to do that, and you get to play it in the most pure sense. And I think what puts this game ahead of some of the other stealth style games with combat is that the reactions of the AI and the enemies are very varied and unique. And yeah, you do have those sequences where you're going from this type of enemy to that type of enemy, but they are interesting when you have those interactions, and they are different, where it makes those interactions and scenarios pretty cool and unique and fun to figure out. Yeah. And like we said earlier, just the different big moments in this really hit home for me. The Ethan fight with Ellie really, I felt, was a really cool sequence. One of the better ones, I think, just because your character is weaker and like you're not able to do as much as you could with the Joel character. And then just the reunion with that, Joel coming and you're going after her and you know that there's something wrong. And the whole snow stuff aspect too is really cool. They just do a great job of different scenery and different landscapes. Yep. So they for me, this, I'm super excited for 2, but this game on its own, I would never need another one. Just story wise, I think they had the perfect ending, like you said.
I think that's why I'm not as excited for 2, because I'm fine with what I got in the first game.
Yeah, it feels like the Walking Dead thing, like, oh, everybody loves Clementine. Let's make a game where she's older now and you can play as her. It's like,
it does feel a lot like that. So
I don't need it though. Like, we had a great finish.
It does. It really does.
Yeah. All right, we are getting down there. This is number 2 of the decade for us. Number 2 for me was Arkham City.
Ooh.
That was the best Batman game that was released to this day. I don't care. Arkham Knight had the Batmobile, and that deters enough of that game to make it not as good as Arkham City. Plus, I liked the
open world, huh, Jim? The open world.
But it's not even open world. It's a smaller.
I don't like open worlds, but
it's a smaller open world though. Like, I liked it. Arkham City was too it was open as well.
It does not lie, Jim. The map does not lie.
Yeah. So I did probably, that's part of my open world percentage, by the way, this game. But I love this game. I love the Riddler's clues. I loved finding that, figuring that stuff out. The weakest fight for me, I think, was the Mr. Freeze thing. But
I love that fight. That was my favorite.
I don't know.
Boss fight.
Everyone loves that fight.
I don't know. I thought that was too easy. That's where I
play it on the
I'm not
hard.
saying it was hard, but
You got to play it on hard. You got to do all the things on the hard. Hardest level.
Maybe that's what it was. But I loved that first sequence when you're playing as Bruce Wayne in the beginning, and it's just like you get that aspect of the thing. You're like, wow, this is awesome. And then like becoming Arkham City, like why it's called that. It's really awesome to have that. And then how they explained why there's only thugs on the streets and stuff. It was pretty cool for me. And like I said, playing as Batman in a sequel, Arkham Asylum was a great game. I loved how it got this whole thing off the ground, but I thought this was the best version of it all. Like I said, Arkham Knight probably technically is better, but it's so they're very close as it is. So it doesn't matter. Like that part of it, like the combat part of it's so close that the game itself, the story itself, was better than Arkham Knight. But Arkham Knight has moments, give it credit, but Batmobile kills that game for me. And I played so much of these 2 games that this is in my decade. That one's not.
And you get your Hamill Joker too.
Yeah, and I get Hamill's Joker, and yeah, we get the voice actors we want, the voice actors we all deserve. Let me rephrase that. So, I really love this game so much. Like it, yeah. I have Arkham Knight here, but I'm like, I do want to play Arkham City again more, and I don't want to play the Arkham Knight anymore. I don't care to play that game. So, the urge is not there to play it. Mike, you're number 2.
My number 2 is Mass Effect 2.
Oh.
I was wondering when this is going to show up. I was like, how do you want to talk about this game so far?
Mike, I was writing in Arkham Knight, and as you were, I was like, how funny would it be if he follows up my Arkham City with like the Arkham Knight? But okay.
Well, I don't think Arkham Knight's. I would put Arkham City higher for Mike.
I think Mike, what would you say is better?
You're gonna find out, aren't you?
We're gonna get to it.
Oh, wait, okay.
Jim's just rattling off all our number 1s before we even get to them.
No, I really expected Mass Effect 2 to be his number one, but okay, go on.
I mean, it could have went both ways, honestly, but Mass Effect 2, obviously, we all loved that game. Again, it's in a live world, it has great quests, it had side quests with characters that mattered. Pretty much every character was interesting that you recruited, at least. Every different place you went to had its own sort of style. This game had like good atmosphere for a game that was somewhat spread out. Like each place, like you still had little things and details you wanted to like soak in and notice as well. That's like a lesser like considered part of this, but it just having that hub world. You're on Normandy there. You can meet and talk with all of your crew. It was a great continuation of the older game, which was a little rough around the edges, in my opinion. But now we have a great sort of incentive with the loyalty missions to actually spend time with these characters, know what they want, and then go on specific missions with them, and then to try to save the world. And the story was interesting. You can create you had just enough flexibility, I think, with your Shepard. He's still Shepard, so there's still like written stuff for him or her, but it's yours. It's your version of them, and I like that. I don't like the total blank slate character where it could be anything, so nothing really like no one says your name and nothing is really like scripted. I like that it's somewhat guided, and but there was room for like deviation here and there. But in the end, it's just a great RPG. The world felt alive and important. The only reason why it's not my number one is the actual moment-to-moment like gameplay isn't like the top tier. It's a good third-person shooting and with like some different abilities and stuff, but it's not like that's not a strength to me of the game. But still, just we talked about this so much, and it had such an effect. And again, I'm looking for more games, especially with like side quests and characters like this, to have it matter in the end, like it did in here with that final suicide mission where you could screw everything up if you didn't have a loyal crew or if you chose poorly.
Yeah,
it's just the choices, at least within this game, mattered. So
yeah,
that's why it's my number two, right up there, top.
Tony, you're number two.
My number two is Super Mario Galaxy 2. And I had to think about this one because there were a lot of Mario games of the decade, but Galaxy 2, I think, is probably my perfect Mario game. Just because, I like all Mario games, most of them anyway. But Galaxy 2 was a refinement of Galaxy 1, obviously. But as I've become older, I've realized, I really appreciate 64, obviously, because it was groundbreaking. And Sunshine was okay, but I'm not a fan of like the whole open like collectathon kind of thing. Like it just doesn't do that for me anymore. Like when I was a kid, I loved doing that because it was a way to get a lot of playtime out of one game because you might not be able to get that many for a while. But Galaxy 2 is just it is this perfect intersect of like you can get the critical needed whatever stars you needed to beat the game, but they had variety in the missions because it was a mission based thing. And it's like, hey, you have to get from point A to point B, or you have to collect these specific coins in this area, and it's like the levels change based on which one you load out, and it's just what you're doing. It's platforming bliss because it's just taking that formula of Mario being like essentially a ninja, which is kind of crazy to think about. He has this repertoire of moves that combine movement and momentum and inertia. You add on the gravity aspect where he's in space and you're traveling between these planets basically that have their own gravity system. A lot of times you're upside down and flipping switches to invert polarity and all that stuff. It just makes this really super awesome tight experience where it's just fun from start to finish. And then even when you beat it, it's like, hey, here's Luigi. And just like in more traditional Mario fashion, it's like Luigi plays a little bit differently, and then all the missions are a bit either easier or more difficult because he's a little slower, looser to control, but his jumping mechanics are a bit better and stuff like that. And it's just, an awesome package. Again, like I can't think of a level in that game that's bad.
Yep. Cool. All right. Corey, you're number 2.
My number 2 is also Mass Effect 2.
Okay. Figured that much.
I was getting a little worried. I was like, what the fuck is going on here?
I mean, you knew it had to be
You're number
there.
1, Jim. I know it.
Yes.
Yeah. So Mass Effect 2, as we've mentioned before, is a refinement on the first game, which was a good game, and then they just took that game and went to 11, and basically from the start, I think you mentioned, Tony, from the start, talk about Last of Us having a great opening sequence. Mass Effect 2 had a fantastic opening sequence and gave a pretty cool reason for players to kind of change up their Shepard if they wanted to and make them different. Obviously, this whole transferring file saves to another game was done before, but this one really felt like, oh, this is going to matter. This is something that's going to mean something. I made
decisions in the first game so much knowing that.
And I played the first game so I could have different decisions happen, so I could have those decisions
I didn't replay it. I stuck by my decisions. I stuck by my decisions in that game. Nope, carried over. This is what I made. I live with it.
I had to.
I think I played through Mass Effect 7 times. Because I played through maybe 6 times because I wanted to play through different sequence, see how different choices were made, and just playing on different the male and the female side, the Paragon and the
Renegade. Yep.
Renegade side. It's just trying to see those different actions and what those effects are going to have and things like that. Just one of the most ambitious games out there, and like you were saying, the solo the story missions for your companions or for your the crew that you have and the loyalty missions there, those were really cool, and just again having that matter, and then just being super satisfied when you nail a relationship. I get those answers and have them feel good about the different conversation trees that you're going down. It's such a cool world that you're really immersed in and feel like everything is important. Until obviously certain things happen later on, but it had some really awesome characters. They're still some of my favorite characters in this game, in any game.
Ultimately, that's why.
Jim, you can talk obviously.
Yeah, this is my number 1, and that reasoning is because of the characters. Mass Effect 3 would be nowhere near as. A lot of people rate that really highly because it plays the greatest, but it wouldn't have as much payoff if it wasn't for what you get from these characters established in 2 and how much attachment you get to them in 2.
And the DLC is really good.
Yeah, really good. Think about Morden. That whole thing, his thing in 3 is not a payoff from. It's because of how much you've established from 2. There's been even remember Thane. Dying later on. It's crazy. All of it. Rex.
Your favorite character, Jacob, Jim?
Yeah, I left him for dead. So, yeah.
I think he was in 2 or was he in 3? He was in 3.
He's in 2. No, he's in 2.
Okay.
I sent him off to do the hacking, and while I did the hacking, he did not survive it.
This did start by the end. There was human characters. Enough of them.
Well, I was just I was trying to make my decision at the end of that gauntlet was who do I felt like I couldn't make it through with everybody. So I'm if I'm going to sacrifice somebody that I can't sacrifice the other characters. By default, I have to sacrifice him. I'm sorry. I was more attached to those other characters, and that's where I would make that biased decision, unfortunately. But I just love this game because it was the start of Mass Effect 1, the culmination of what they were trying to do in that game and make it into this. And people still argue 1 was awesome with this RPG stuff. And I'm yeah, that's fine.
Joe.
Yeah, I don't need I don't need to scan. I don't need to scan planets. I don't need. It's I don't need to be driving on planets. I'm sorry. I don't need to be driving with a robot.
I forgot about that part.
Yeah. This game made things so much easier, and the transfer of save data into this game, as we mentioned for your decisions, we talked about this game for probably 12 podcasts, maybe more. I don't even know. It was ridiculous how much we talked about this game. It was
more than a year.
It was forever, and just every decision, how much we could not wait for Mass Effect 3 because of how big this game was. It's my game of the decade. There was no question when I started this list. at all.
Yeah, and then the relationships you have with these characters were meaningful, and just like the way they finish too are really like satisfying in this game.
It was impactful
Mhm.
because you cared about like the entire time. I'm like, who was the? I'm trying to remember the bald chick's name.
Jack.
Jack. Thank you.
Yeah, that's
I'm like
right.
Jack, hold that because I had to pick. I had to do the force field, and I remember that decision because the entire time I'm like, hold that fucking force field, please hold this force field. And I'm like the whole time, like, did I make the wrong decision? Please, you have to hold this force. And then like she made it, I'm like, oh, it was awesome. I was like, because I'm like, come on, hold. But like you get so into the story. I was that into that story. I literally was saying that at my TV. I was standing while playing the ending of this game. Like, because I was like, I got at that. I'm not sitting in my chair. I was standing with my controller at the TV.
And it's one of the best lead ups to an ending that's actually satisfying.
Yeah, and like you said, the beginning of it, just like having to be able to restart your character the way if you wanted to change up a little bit, you could. The differences of Renegade Paragon. I mean, that's to this day is iconic in terms of decisions of good and evil. Do you want to play Paragon or Renegade? That's people refer to that in new games now, like nothing like to do with Mass Effect because that's just been like, it's so like established from this game. Not that it wasn't around before those terms. I'm just saying that it was made popular by this game. Yeah, I love every aspect of this game so much.
The last good game BioWare made.
Yeah. I would completely agree.
It's hard not to argue with that.
Well, I would say the Mass Effect 3 is technically the better playing game, and it does play fantastically. But this was the best game of the series because it still plays really well. So I still enjoyed it. So my number one, Mike, number one.
My number one is Arkham City with Arkham Knight as an honorable mention. Then I only say that because
you need to decide. No, I'm just kidding.
It's definitely City, but Knight would have made like maybe been in the top 6 through 10 somewhere if it was its own thing.
Made it its own. We gave you the option. I mean, it's just you'd have to cut some things off the list.
Yeah, that's why I sort of.
It's tough to do that. Yeah,
I shoved them together here.
Yeah,
but City to me,
it's an awesome game.
The combat was at its peak here. Like I remember seeing the first trailer when you had the 3-person counters for the first time and all of the different gadgets. It's like, wow, it's because as as well crafted and sort of rhythmic as the first game's combat was, it was pretty basic, and this just added a lot of depth to it, and there was so much more you could do.
The entire time, in the first game, you felt tied a little bit. And they did that on purpose a little bit with Batman in terms of his gadgets and such. This game had your full gauntlet, essentially.
Yeah, and so to me, that the combat is at its best. Each there's differences actually, more than even more stuff in Night, because I've played that recently. I played both games kind of recently, which goes to show you why I think they're among my top games of the decade. But City, it was a big step up in a lot of ways. From Asylum. Not that Asylum was bad. I really liked it. It's just they just added so much more.
Fantastic game. It's
exciting here.
Yeah, this was like I said, it's like Mass Effect to Mass Effect 2. It was like the same idea.
So you have this open world in City, but it's so densely packed with stuff like Easter eggs, but Easter eggs that matter because they're trophies when you scan them. You get references, you get the Arkham City stories, where you can read up more information about the world in there. As you said, it was kind of mind-blowing to start as Bruce Wayne, and then you get to suit up, you get to see how Quincy Sharp started this whole situation with Hugo Strange in the background. So you have all these different characters. You get sort of a No Man's Land light storyline, which was one of my favorite comic books that I read about Batman comic stories, where there's sort of factions of villains that own sections of the area. You get and the Riddler stuff. Some people don't like it. I think it was at its best here because it was challenging. It was pretty dense, but it also led to certain missions as well, and it was using the detective muscle of Batman as yourself, sort of, to figure out how to do it and find all of them in certain ways, which I don't think the other games really did as much, and certainly didn't have to win any races to get Riddler trophies. Annoying bullshit in Night.
Yeah,
Oh
it's
God.
definitely
Yeah.
thematic.
Yeah, fuck
in
that.
City.
I remember
that.
that was one of the worst
Fuck
things. It's
that.
like pulling into this, like, oh, I'm Riddler. I created this racetrack for you, Batman. I'm like, what the?
Yeah. No.
Ooh,
Fuck
has
you in this
happened.
tank, goddamn
Yeah.
bullshit
Yeah, no, the
control.
tank. I mean, and that's why like Night would be like on the lower half. I still play that to death, with especially the challenges. Now I like the challenges. I like getting deep into the combat, and I don't really think you can fully appreciate the Predator combat, especially. I think until you do some of those challenges and do the alternate sort of objectives that it forces you to do to sort of, use all of the tools in your kit to do things in interesting and fun ways. To me, like the Arkham series has these two sorts of different but interesting and character appropriate gameplay that like it's pretty unique. Obviously, everyone copied the whole Arkham rhythm style, although they're moving away from that a little bit now. But the combination of the Predator stuff and that is just it's very unique. It fits the character, and of course, Arkham City's story with an actual sort of written ending for the Joker, like right.
Yeah.
It's crazy that they went and did that, and I sort of view these games as the continuation of like the old
Animated series.
animated series. So I mean, it felt like a full circle sort of story. It's like 20 years in the making here that we got an ending to here.
Yeah.
It was just great, and I'm probably going to play it some more too because I just played the revisited version, and I'm going to probably go back and do the challenges, which also contain a bunch of other characters that play differently, like Nightwing and Robin and Catwoman. Catwoman even has her own sections in this game. So there's a lot to do. I mean, you have to get into wanting to like score well in the challenges to get the full value, in my opinion, of these games. But I did.
I didn't cover much of the challenges.
I did.
got great
I
value.
am, and I love them. So
Yeah.
there's really not much when I go back and look at City and think like, what could it have done better or more? There's not much more than it just being longer, in my opinion. So that's why it's my number one game of the decade.
Cool. All right, Tony, your number one game of the decade.
Yeah, number one. No, there's no hiding it, obviously.
Nope.
But,
we all know each other's
Zelda,
number ones at this point.
Yeah, number one was easy. I mean, I know Corey's. I'm not gonna spoil it, but we all know Corey's by now. But mine is Zelda Breath of the Wild, and I gave it some serious thought because the top five. I mean, we talked about it. Like top five. I mean, to get to that point, it's all just relatively close at that point. But I thought about it, and even though I'm a Zelda fanboy, if this were whatever Legend of Zelda or Belda or whatever the hell the meme is at this point, I mean, I would still absolutely love this game because it's this perfect intersection of open world, but not just open world for the sake of putting these markers on your map to be like, oh, go here and there's something over here and point of interest, and you open up your map and you just get like this, I don't know, dilemma where it's like I'm just overwhelmed by the amount of choices. Where this is the game that's like, hey, just here's a small tutorial, you get all the items you need in the game. Like you could just go straight to Ganon and beat the game right off, and you beat the plateau if you want to. Good luck, but you can do it if you really want to. But it's just after you get there, it's like, all right, just go to wherever you want. You have your main objective, which is to kill Ganon, and you're free to go and kill him whenever you feel that you are ready. The recommendation is you do these 4 dungeons to get the powers that lie within the beast there, but do whatever you want. And it's just this experience where there's these systems where, like I said, it's chemistry because you have magnetism for the metal, you have electricity with metallic objects, you have the water and the freezing with the cryosis, you have the time stop mechanic, which allows you to build up kinetic energy with objects, layered onto that open world game, and you can interact in so many different ways. You can cut down a tree and roll its log into the river, and then hop on that, and then just ride the river all the way down if you really wanted to, instead of traversing and stuff like that. Or traditionally you're climbing this mountain and you jump off and you paraglide to your next point of interest. And that is one of the points to me where this game is just completely magical, because wherever you look in the distance, there's some point of interest where it's like, what is that over there? Like,
there's that weird island. There's
a weird island. There's this suspicious looking cliff. There's this giant tree sticking out of this mountainside. And what the developers here did is like, there's a reason that you want to go there. You just don't know why. And it's always this system of, okay, I got there, and you got the thing, whether it's a Korok or an item or whatever dungeon, and then by the time you step out, there's another point of interest, and it just this never-ending loop of just okay, fantastic discovery and exploration, and one of those things that I really value about this game that I don't think a lot of people talk about is this experience is almost unique for everybody, because one of those things that when I talk to somebody, it's like, oh, how did you do this, or what did you think about this level? And I've had people are like, I didn't even do that dungeon, or I didn't do that puzzle, or like Jim, the first Lionel you fight in the game for the electric arrows.
Yeah.
I stumbled on that. Like I fought that guy for probably an hour and a half before I finally like just beat him down. And I talked to somebody else. I'm like, dude, you fought him? And I'm like, yeah, didn't you? And he's like, no, dude, I just grabbed the arrows and ran. I'm like, I didn't even know that was an option. Like, I didn't even know you could just do that.
I didn't fight him. I did that.
It was you, and it was like, what? Like, I bashed my head because like you got two shot by him because it was so early in the game.
I saw him walking. I'm like, I can get around this guy.
Yeah, and it's just like but it rewards you because there's just so many different ways, and just to cite what like Mike said with Metal Gear, it's just there are objectives and you're free to go about it what you want, and it's just one of those interesting things where people are still discovering techniques to beat this game or beat dungeons and puzzles where it's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? And it's almost its own genre of just game. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what I would say is like, when I think about any game that made the top list, the top 10 are fun games, but this is one of those games that like elevates the genre for me to the point where it's like, I'm glad I play video games as a hobby, which is really rare because to me, like at this point in 2020, so many genres have evolved and come about and been refined to the point where like, yeah, okay, I can play another shooter, but I mean, I've done most of them. Titanfall 2 is probably the last one where I was like, okay, this is new, it's a new twist, but to be like a truly memorable experience, I think before this was probably like Mario 64 or Ocarina of Time, as a teenager. And then as an adult, it's like, yeah, like all these other games are fun. Gears of War, Mass Effect, Last of Us, Spider-Man. But like this is something like that was truly mind-blowing and groundbreaking. And to the point where like the way I can best describe it is if I could just erase my memories of the game and experience it again, I would love it, because I don't think it'd be the same for me. I'd be doing something different and experiencing a different version of that story.
Yeah. My only gripe about this game would be fuck the rain.
No, I agree with you. The rain is just like anytime you're in, it's just like
I have a torch in my hand. I have to run this like you have to run that torch across to get these lanterns lit in a certain amount of time, and it always fucking rained for me.
Yeah.
So that's all. Yeah. But, and I would sit there and wait. I'm like, fine, I'll wait. So, yeah. All right, Corey.
It's no surprise.
What is your game of the year? What is it? What a game of the decade? What is it?
It's Aliens Colonial Marines.
Yeah, buddy.
No, it's obviously Borderlands 2.
Yeah.
If you said anything else, I was gonna call bullshit right away. I'd be like, "You're lying. Don't even try. Don't pretend."
That man's a liar.
Yep. So,
yeah. It is like I understand why that would be. I mean, you put more hours than I did, and I put a lot of hours in it.
Yeah, Borderlands 2, I played more than any other game in my entire life, I'd say.
Yeah, you have every version of it.
I played the 4 characters to the max, played the DLC characters to the max, played the game multiple times with each of them, and then all the DLC played through. And some of the best DLC that a game has had, I would say, is Borderlands 2.
Again, reiterate on multiple consoles.
Yes, on multiple consoles. Yes. I did buy it on PlayStation and Xbox and PS Vita.
Yep.
No PC version, bro?
I own a PC version.
See, he owns every version.
And I almost bought...
not VR.
Not VR.
Oh.
I don't own VR. I almost bought a VR version just so I could say I have all the versions. But yeah, so with Borderlands, just the loop that they've created for me was just the most satisfying loop that I've experienced in any game, really, because it's something you could do for hours or you could do for minutes if you wanted to, because it's essentially the same thing over and over again, really. And then the fact that the combination of weapons that they built, that engine, that gun building engine, essentially, is so satisfying. because you do get a lot of garbage. But when you do get that, god tier weapon, which there is here, and you feel so good. Like, yes, I finally got the thing I was farming for, and then you can go and use it to farm the next thing, because there's always something else, and the DLC always brought you some more stuff to do. And this game really built on that first one, where it took what was so good about the first one, which people liked, and then just made it even better, where a lot of times they just make it the same, like, oh, we want another, like, people love this, they'll just do another one. But this one, they took what people liked and then made it better and more exciting, in my opinion. And then obviously you mentioned before earlier, Jim, the villain really tied it all together, because now you had this protagonist or antagonist who really drove you through the story and made you want to go out and kick his ass, but at the same time you loved every minute of him being an ass to you. So it was just like perfect combination of everything. Great combat loops, and then the game obviously looks really unique, and it's accessible, and had couch co-op, which a lot of games didn't have anymore, like they don't have anymore. Just like a great combination of things there, and having characters come back and then characters dying that you didn't expect that would, and just like a lot of really great moments in this game as well. And again, just that loop, though, that's what got me. Is that loop.
Hooked on that. This kind of games.
Absolutely. I mean, you can see on my list there's a few of them. So
this is the gateway drug. This was the gateway drug for you.
And the characters all were unique too. They all felt interesting and different to play. They had great skill trees that you can build different combinations and make them go and act and perform differently too. So really great.
Wow. All right. And that is our of the decade, folks. We're going to recap our list here individually. So I'll kick us off with my 10 through 1. The Walking Dead, Diablo 3, Overwatch, XCOM Enemy Unknown, Fire Emblem Awakening, Breath of the Wild, Borderlands 2, The Last of Us, Arkham City, and Mass Effect 2. Mike?
The Jedi Fallen Order, Sony's Spider-Man, the PlayStation one.
Sony and Marvel Spider-Man.
Yes. Fallout New Vegas, Horizon Zero Dawn, God of War, PlayStation 4 one. Metal Gear Solid 5, Witcher 3, Injustice 2, Mass Effect 2, and Arkham City.
With an honorable mention of Arkham Knight. We'll give you that one.
Yeah.
Tony?
Mass Effect 2, Nier Automata, Pokemon Go.
That's a good game, too.
Bloodborne. Bayonetta 2, Fire Emblem Awakening, Xenoblade Chronicles, Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, Super Mario Galaxy 2, and Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild.
Nice. Corey?
Mine were Rocket League, Spider-Man, Sony Spider-Man, Persona 4, Golden, Overwatch, Diablo 3, God of War, Destiny, Last of Us, Mass Effect 2, and Borderlands 2.
Yeah, a lot of numbers in the list, but there's a lot of good games this decade. Looking forward to the next gen coming out. Looking forward to the stuff we have still coming out for games. We get it's early in 2020 still. Nothing big has hit yet, I don't think.
And they won't come.
It keeps going further out.
And everything gets delayed, as we'll talk about soon. We're going to be doing. We've got a lot of topics coming up. We have most anticipated coming up. We've got our bold predictions. Sorry, thank you. We also have a spoiler cast for Fallen Order we want to do. Mike, Tony, and myself all played and finished that game, so we're going to talk about that. That's all in the docket coming up this year. A lot of stuff coming out, obviously later on. We still got to do by the time we get through all of this, we got to do a summer preview for movies and games and stuff too. So we got a lot to do here. So thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this. I'm sure that if you've listened to us from the beginning, you've heard our talk about Mass Effect 2. So appreciate one more time hearing that talked about. Maybe BioWare will make a comeback at some point. No. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. You can write us podcast at allyoucangeek.net. Follow us on Twitter, allyoucangeek. Like us on Facebook. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. We appreciate it. See you soon. Thanks for listening.